Okay, in today's session, let us discuss about the typical implementation landscape. So, in general, you come across in most of the organizations. But one thing, remember, when we are speaking about these system landscapes, the system landscapes purely depends on the what kind of solution we are implementing there. So, the first and foremost thing is you need to understand what is that solution is. Based on that, you need to think about the system landscapes. So here I'm considering a situation like this where they are using SAP Hana as a data warehousing solution or as a data mart. So for this, what kind of system setup we'll be having that we are going to discuss today? As a warehousing solution or as a data mart. I'll tell you the reason why I'm selecting this kind of solution. Once you complete this topic, you'll understand it easily. Because generally in the companies, a little bit complicated landscape means this landscape only. If you understand this any other landscapes, you'll be able to understand very easily. So HANA as a data warehousing solution or as a data mart, native HANA. So when you're speaking about a data warehousing solution, so mainly three things are needed. So we need database to store the data. The second thing, we need ETL tools to extract the data and do required transformations and load the data. And finally, we need some reporting tools to present the data. Anywhere in the world, any warehousing solution you take, this is what you find. There's a database, there's an ETL tool, and there are some reporting tools. So now let us see whether we have the same or anything different here in this landscape. So this HANA system landscape, what we are discussing here, is for the same HANA as a warehousing solution or as a data mart. See, if you look at this very first time, it may look very complicated, but the matter of fact is, if you concentrate a little bit and understand, it's a pretty simple thing. It's a very simple landscape and easily you can understand this. So whatever I mentioned just now, needed things for your warehousing solution, exactly the same you find here in this landscape. Okay, let us look at this. The first and foremost thing, we are speaking about having a database for storing the data, the warehousing database. So we want to use HANA database here. So this is your HANA database server. And you know that whenever you want to run HANA database server in an organization, we need an appliance and operating system. Just an example, they are given SUSE Linux Enterprise Server here. It can be even Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So where we'll install the database server and small components. Don't worry much about those small components. This is your database server. So once your database server is installed and ready, our next task is, so there will be different source systems in the company. From those source systems, we need to extract the data and load the data into this database so that further we can think about analyzing it. So the sources from which we extract the data, those sources we call them as data sources. So you can see here, these are the data sources. So just some examples are given in this, just few examples. It may not be same. From one company to another company, these data sources drastically varies. So just few examples are given. It can be your source system can be an ERP system, it it can be BW system or any other non-SAP source. When you say non-SAP source systems, non-SAP sources can be anything. It can be a file system. The files also can be Excel files, CSV files, text files. So non-SAP can be standalone databases like Oracle, SQL Server, DB2. So non-SAP can be, applications like Oracle apps, Civil, with PeopleSoft and all that. So from these different data sources, requirement is we want to extract the data and do required transformations and then load the data into this database. So for that, there are so many ETL tools available which I explained you yesterday clearly, and I explained you what are the advantages and limitations we have in each ETL tool. So some of them they have shown here. Data service can be one of the ETL tool. You can see that here. This is SAP Data Services, where a separate server they maintain. This can be one of the ETL tool. We also call it as BODS. So you can see these R marks here. From these different sources, you extract and load the data into HANA. So wherever that data services is not working out for you, you can go with some SLT kind of replication technologies. This is SLT, SAP Landscape Transformation. So here also you have a separate server which can extract the data from sources like ERP and load the data into HANA. And we can also implement something like Sybase replication server. As I mentioned, even though it's not part of HANA licensing now, still the customer can implement by taking the license separately for that. So one component you can see server and another one is Sybase replication agent. And this will be installed on the server and this will be in the client, client in the sense source database, and they can replicate the data directly. And even we can include DXE here if you want. You can just add DXE here. Yeah, add this place from the source system, loading the data into database, HANA database, particularly for SAP applications like ERP, CRM, SCM. So that's also a possibility you have. So like this, different ETL tools we can consider, and once they decide on that, we can use them for extracting and loading the data into HANA. So once the data comes to your HANA database, here is a very, very important point. Remember, they don't do reporting on the tables directly. In fact, it's not recommended to do reporting directly on the tables. Okay. The reason I'll tell you, if you do reporting on top of the tables, your analysis becomes only two-dimensional. Okay, so generally what always customers will look to have is they want to have multi-dimensional analysis. Any customer. Okay. So how to do that? How we can have the multi-dimensional analysis? So multi-dimensional analysis means we want multi-dimensional reporting. So how is it possible? So to understand that in a better way, I'll give you a simple example. See, this is all just imagination, a simple imagination. You'll be able to realize what do you mean by exactly multi-dimensional. See, table, table is just combination of rows and columns. So obviously when we build a report on top of the table, it's going to be only two-dimensional. Okay. So that storage, no one can change. Storage always is going to be only a table format. So obviously storage, no one can change. Storage will be always two-dimensional format only. But coming to the multidimensional is not a way of storing the data. It's actually the way of presenting the data. Because no one can store the data in a multidimensional way. So obviously presentation can be done. Presentation can be done in a multidimensional way. So how can it be done? So for that, a simple example you take. Suppose there is a picture on the wall, you are watching it directly. Just a simple imagination. Take this. There's a picture on the wall, you are watching it directly. Imagine the same image, you are watching it through a transparent cube. Take a glass cube. Take a glass cube between you and that image. Watch that image through the transparent cube, glass cube. Think about it. Does it make any difference for you or not? Imagine. You can easily imagine that it does make a difference, because when you watch that image through that cube, cube is having different dimensions. In different dimensions, that image will be visible to you differently. So what you're doing there is, whatever that image you are trying to present in a multidimensional way, that cube is making that image presented in a multidimensional way. So that is important for us to understand. We need to understand what cube is doing there. So exactly the same way here also, when it comes to reporting, they don't do reporting on the tables. Generally doing reporting on the tables happens in OLTP applications, but when it comes to OLAP, they don't do reporting on the tables. Instead of that, on top of the tables, they build those cubes. So technically we call them as models. They build the models, which in general we call them as cubes. And then on top of those cubes or the models, they build the reports. What that cube or model is doing there is, it's allowing you to present the data in a multi-dimensional way. So that's the specialty and advantage of those models. So generally in other warehousing solutions like BW and all that, they use the term cubes. But here, when it comes to SAP HANA, we don't have any concept called cubes, because it's a database. SAP came up with something new here called information views. So once the data is replicated into the HANA in the form of tables, on top of the tables they create information views. So you have to use the term information views only. So instead of making it so complicated, we can just refer to this as cubes, on top of which they go for reporting. So there will be modeling consultants who are responsible for that, creating those information views for different analysis requirements. And then the reporting developers will develop the reports on top of these cubes, those information views. Okay, so it may be a bit confusing sometimes, because you are not from that, generally from warehousing backgrounds and all that. Let me just show you a small thing here. So I'll take you to a reporting tool, say example Microsoft Excel. You can observe in this diagram also, you can observe this end user workstation, this end user system where SMS Excel is installed, and you can see this MS Excel is directly connected to this HANA database. It's a direct connectivity, and for that you need drivers, and those drivers are part of HANA database client, which already explained you earlier. So along with this Excel, this HANA database client is also installed, which will allow you to connect to the HANA database. So now I'll show you that Excel here. Observe. So I'm taking it to the MS Excel. Go to the menu here, data, mother sources, data connection wizard, other slash advanced, click on next. Here you observe this is actually the driver what I'm referring to. General MS Excel, if you see, you won't find this no HANA MDX provided. So this comes with your HANA client software. So once HANA client is installed, you'll get these multi-dimensional expression drivers also. Select that and click on next. Provide, it's asking for HANA server details. Say example, in our landscape we have one HANA server which is used by modeling people. I'm connecting to that. Now see, once if I connect to the HANA database, tables are not accessible to me. Instead of that, you observe here is showing the type cube. Actually, these are all called information views in HANA. So there will be different types of information views, and based on those information views only, they'll do reporting. So we don't access tables here. That's a big difference you can see. So they have some views like this. And then they proceed with the designing, okay, dimensions and all. All this data, whatever you see, all this data is coming from HANA database. Very, very important thing, remember that. So first, on top of the tables there will be some models created, which we call them as information views. In general they'll be referred as cubes. Then on top of that only they go for reporting. That's what the specialty we have in OLAP reporting is, multi-dimensional. Because in most of the people, the wrong assumption they'll be having is they'll assume that data is stored in the cubes. Actually, cubes and all that, they don't store data. They just present the data the way you want. Okay, so that's one small technical thing. If the customer is opting for some reporting like MS Excel and all that, it's a standalone tool which will be installed in the client workstation. We'll be having the database client installed, and then we'll allow them to connect to the database by providing some connectivity details, and they can build a report on top of that as I shown you just now. But when they want to have some advanced analysis requirements, they cannot rely on Excel kind of reporting. So obviously they'll prefer to have the better reporting. So most of the times the customer opts to go with BO reporting, SAP Business Objects Reporting. So in case if a customer is opting for Business Objects Reporting, so they'll maintain a BO server. You can see here we have this BOE, Business Objects Enterprise Server. So they'll maintain that BO server. Then when they use that BO reporting, the procedures will be slightly different. There will be technical people who need to establish connection to HANA database, and then they need to build those reports. Sometimes they need to build universes and all that. Universes on top of which they go for reporting. I mean, depends what kind of BO reporting they're using. So whatever they create, the connections, whatever the reports they develop, all of them will be stored in this BO server. There will be repositories there, they will be storing. And those reports will be accessed by the end users from their client workstations. So through web browsers. So that's why they're given web access to BI client tools. So through web browser, they can access those reports and execute the report. But one thing remember, here these end users, when they're using this BO reporting, they don't directly connect to the database. Actually, they're accessing a report which is available in BO server. BO server in turn connected to HANA database. Even when the data flows, data will be flowing from the HANA database to BO server, from there to the end user workstations in whatever the reporting format they want, depending on the reporting tool they're using. So that's why these error marks are shown like this. Okay. Similarly, the customer can opt for any kind of reporting, whichever is interested in. There's no rule to go with only BO reporting, because I told you already yesterday, on top of SAP HANA, any kind of reporting they can use, whichever the customer is interested in. And then finally in this landscape, we have one more called admin workstation. See, don't assume that admin workstation is used only by administrators. That's not true. Actually, admin workstation here means a workstation where technical people are going to work. All the technical people, like, there will be some modeling consultants who will be responsible for creating those information views, what I told you, those models. So if they want to do that, they need a tool. That tool we provide to them is HANA Studio, that graphical tool. And the connectivity happens by using this HANA client. That's why HANA client is there. There may be someone who is responsible for loading the data from different sources into HANA using data services. If they want to load the data from different sources into HANA using this data services, just by installing server, it won't happen. What they have to do, after having the data services server set up, installed by the BO administrators, it is the responsibility of one of these developers to design the data flows. Data flow. So data flow means you need to design a flow of the data from source to the target. So what is the source system, what is the target system, connections, mappings, all that they need to do. For that, the graphical tool provided is called Data Services Designer. There's a graphical tool called Data Services Designer. So that's what the purpose of the tool, which can be used for designing the data flows when they're using data services to load the data into HANA. And similarly, there is something called Information Designer. As I explained to you just now, in case if they are going with the BO reporting, so part of the BO reporting, they need to create some connections, universes and all that. And that they can perform by using this Information Designer tool. In general, they also call it as IDT, Information Designer tool. Then Excel, in case if they want to do Excel-based reportings. And sometimes BO administrators needs this web access to BI admin tools, particularly for batch job schedulings, RFC server interface creations, all that they can do using these BI admin tools. And apart from all this, we can also mention about here SAP GUI. We can write SAP GUI also, because when we want to work with SLT and DXC kind of implementations, definitely we need SAP GUI. configurations and all that if you want to perform, we need SAP graphical user interface also. It's not only these tools, SAP GUI is required here. So that workstation that they are calling it as admin workstation. So like you can see here, whatever the system I'm working with now, that we can call it as admin workstation. See here you'll find almost all what I explained you there. You'll find SAP GUI here. You'll find data services tools like data services designer. You'll find BO reporting tools like that information design tool and all other reporting tools. So all that you'll be able to find it here. The HANA Studio. HANA client is just drivers installed. Okay, just a second. Okay, so you can call it as admin workstation. This one is basically like that. So ultimately this is end user workstation. That's how typically a landscape looks like. What you can see is there is a database server, there are some source systems from which data is replicated into that database using some ETL tools, and finally presentation is done by using some reporting. So as simple as that. So let us get some confirmation by looking at one of the company landscape. See, this company has they have implemented SAP HANA here. This is a beverages company. Okay, so in this company they have implemented SAP HANA. A lot of information is available. You can have a look at it. In the Dropbox you have all this, in documents Dropbox. And now I'm interested in that landscape architecture. Let us jump into that landscape architecture diagram and see what they did here. And this is landscape architecture diagram. Now observe this carefully. Just have a look at it just for a minute or two and understand that. And try to compare this landscape with the landscape what we have discussed till now. Are they same or anything different you have? Just observe. Have a look at it. So have a look at it. Just 2 minutes. I'll be back. Try to analyze it in the meanwhile. Okay, if you carefully look at it, you won't feel anything different. Whatever we discuss, same thing will be there here also. So I told you that typical implementation landscapes will be like this is your HANA database server. You can see that this is your database server. The source systems we have are like this. This is your ERP system. They have the DCC with SQL database. So from this ERP system, they preferred using SLT as a replication technology. Mostly it happens from SAP applications because most of the times they want to go with real-time replications. And the two SLT is pretty easy and comfortable to implement when you want to replicate data from SAP sources. So that they preferred. And then there are some non-SAP source systems we have. We don't know what are this. We never heard about this. But from these non-SAP sources, when they want to replicate the data into HANA, they use data services as an ETL tool, and they have replicated data, which they're terming it as third-party data. So you have SAP data, you have third-party data in your HANA database. And finally, this data need to be presented. But as I did mention that they don't present the data in the form of reports directly. First of all, there will be some models built using HANA Studio. So which generally we call them as cubes. But in HANA, we call them as information views. So these are the cubes they built. And on top of that, they preferred BO reporting. They went with BO reporting here. That's why they maintained business object server here, that BOE. So as I mentioned already that they build some universes. On top of that universes, they go with web intelligence reporting, dashboards and all that. That's it. See how simple is that. So that's how a typical implementation landscape in general, this diagram, which you can refer to for any customer. The same diagram. There may be here and there small variations, like sometimes source systems may be different, sometimes based on that ETL tools may vary a little bit. But from that list only what I mentioned. The reporting also they may opt for a slightly different reporting. So in your company, anywhere in the world when you are working for HANA implementations, anywhere in the world, any company you take, the biggest complicated landscape will be this. So if this complicated landscape you are able to understand, you can deal with any other landscapes for any other solutions. That's why I've taken this intentionally. I'm explaining this landscape only intentionally for you. Okay. Why I'm saying that is, let us take an example. For some XYZ customer, take an example, they are implementing ERP on HANA. Forget about this for the time being. So the solution what they want is they want one OLTP solution going for a implementation of ERP on HANA, SAP ERP on HANA. When they implement ERP on HANA, what landscape you find? I don't consider that as a landscape. It's a pretty simple thing. What you find there is an ERP application running on top of HANA database. That's it. It's as simple as that. Now there is no mechanism of some source systems you have there, some ETL tools you have there, some models they build, some separate reporting tools they use. All that won't happen. That's the OLTP system. In that OLTP system, just ERP application installed on top of HANA, and they do some customization if needed, some ABAP developments and all that they do. And finally that they'll give it to the end users. The old traditional way SAP GUI, or maybe in the latest S4 HANA, they use that Fiori screens. That's why we don't need to worry much about those kind of implementation landscapes. This is what is important for you. Hope you are able to understand that point what I am explaining. Okay, so is that clear? Any doubts you have, tell me. As an administrator, knowing about these landscapes is important. It's not that you are going to work with everything. It's not that every single component you are going to set up. So there will be specialists in each and every area, but overall understanding of a project implementation is very much required for any administrator. Yes, of course, you can. But 40 TB data you are speaking about will come down to even less than 15 TB once you migrate it to HANA database. And that too, a lot of strategies they apply now. I mean, those days are gone where you speak about storing that much of volumes of data in OLTP systems. A lot more better options you have. In case some of this data you're using for auditing purpose and all that I told you, right? They'll keep, when they're doing that migration, some portion of this data, they can keep it outside HANA and NLS systems if they're thinking about the cost factors. It is possible. In fact, if they can migrate to S/4HANA, it'll come down even more. So that we can make it maybe around 5 to 8 TB. That 40 TB comes down to 5 to 8 TB if they can migrate to S/4HANA. Okay. So these general questions you can put it in normal chat box for everyone. Just send it to everyone in general, not specific to me in private. In general, you can say. Then anything else? Any more queries you have? Anyone else? So we're slowly getting into more technical things one by one. Have you received any request for that Dropbox link? Aparna will send you a separate link for documentations. Not the one what I given. One I have sent you is for videos, but there will be one separately for documents. So there you find all these documents what I'm showing in the class. Okay, then. See, the next thing what we need to learn and understand is, so when it comes to HANA, using HANA in the company, customer can use SAP HANA in different ways. But you should not consider this just like any other normal databases, because what is important for the customer is customer will always look for having a complete end-to-end solutions. So when his customer is looking for solutions, what kind of solutions we can provide to the customers using HANA. So HANA is part of it. HANA itself is not a complete solution. So HANA is part of it. So what kind of solutions SAP is offering, that also we need to understand, because if you have that overall understanding of what are those solutions offered by SAP, and then tomorrow when you start working in that, in any of the projects, you'll be able to work more effectively. First of all, you'll come to know what exactly the implementation they are doing. Whatever the case, ultimately there will be HANA. As far as HANA database is there, you take care of your admin activities. But that's not the only thing. It's not just having HANA database and doing administration of HANA database, but if you know what is that exactly implementation taking place there, what kind of solution we are providing to the customer, then you'll be able to work more effectively. Even the admin activities you perform at the database level also can be more effective, because based on that sometimes your decision need to be taken. Like say example, if security implementation need to be done, if security need to be implemented, depending on the kind of solution we are implementing, or depending on the kind of deployment scenario, the security maintenance will vary. Because sometimes you have to maintain security only for the reporting users. Sometimes we need to maintain the security only for technical people. Sometimes you need to maintain security for the technical people as well as the end users. End user may be accessing sometimes reports. End user may be accessing some transactions. End users may be accessing only applications, not the database. So things may vary depending on kind of deployment scenario. So unless otherwise you know the deployment scenario, whether you are going with a native HANA there, or they are implementing BW on HANA, or they implementing ERP on HANA. So if you don't have a clarity on that, you won't be able to implement that security effectively. So that's why knowing about those deployment scenarios is also very, very important for you. So our next topic of discussion is that only. That is, what are the deployment scenarios you come across in the companies, or in a different way you want to put it, you can say different kind of solutions offered by SAP using SAP HANA. So that's what we are going to discuss the next. So I'll give you all that, all the details about different solutions. In general, I'll explain. And at that time, I will discuss a little bit about, SAP application server concept also. Because many people, even though they come from basis background, still there is a lot of confusion in the people understanding the basic terms like what is NetWeaver, administration perspective, what exactly you mean by that NetWeaver. And people are not able to differentiate between basis and NetWeaver administrations and all. So I'll just give a overall idea why SAP use those terminologies and how they are working with HANA now. So then in any company, any project, you'll be able to work. Okay.